John, we're joined by somebody who's in the playoffs, but not going to be in that first round because the Dodgers have yet another bye. It's their manager, Dave Roberts.
Yeah, it's great to have Dave on again. He was our first guest. If anyone's going to call us a jinx, well, we're not. They've won 100 games yet again, even after cutting back fourth time in a row in a full season. So Robert's a great guest and a great manager. Obviously, we have managerial situations in New York. They do not have one in Los Angeles, at least in Chavez Ravine.
Yes, we'll be talking about those managerial situations. Buck Showalter out in New York. David Stearns in as the boss of the Mets. What's up with Aaron Boone? We'll, as always, play hit or error in the end if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, you and I were both at yet another press conference to announce yet another person in charge of baseball operations for the New York Mets. I think we both saw John Rico there, who's probably was the only one in the room who's seen more of them than you and I, because he's been on the podium two or three times as an interim guy. Impressions walking away. Yeah. We've kind of known for a year David Stearns is probably going to be the guy. It became official at this press conference.
Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed. He speaks very well. I mean, not only does he say the right things, he says them well. I didn't doubt that he was going to be like this. I mean, we've had some dealings with him being in Milwaukee, but, Milwaukee's not a major media market, as we know. And I do think there's a transition. That's my question about Counsell. I think Counsell's a great manager, and the dealing with the media is not the most important thing. Maybe it is to me and you, but not the most important thing. That would be my question on Counsell. I think Stearns showed that he will be very, very good with the media. And I love the fact that he basically answered the Alonso question and said, I expect him to be the first baseman. Some people took that as, well, there's wiggle room. He could change his mind. It doesn't mean anything. I believe it. It doesn't make any sense to trade Alonso. I'm not saying he's Mookie Betts, but that obviously the Red Sox have regretted that trade since they made it with a year to go for free agency. I feel like the Mets are going to do the same thing with Alonso if they do trade him, and I believe them that they're going to at least hold on to him, whether they extend him now or not. Hold on to him and try to sign him as a free agent if you can't do it now, just like the Yankees did with Aaron Judge.
Yeah, John, I think that one of the things that David Stearns did smartly is when he broke out in the group with the reporters, he mentioned that New York is a different beast. He's from here. He grew up a Met fan. He knows the different beast, but there's still reaction time. Like I always point out, Joey Gallo never played an important game with the Rangers. Literally the first game he played in July of that year with the Yankees is the most important game he's ever played. You got to be like, people really care about baseball here. Like the spring training matters. Like all the games matter in more. April 7th matters more than some teams' whole seasons around here. And you have to get used to that level of intensity when it's going on.
Yeah, I mean, he gets it. That's important. Also, the record is outstanding. I know some people are poo-pooing it. What did he ever win? He never got to the World Series. He never won the World Series. Well, you know what? He got to the playoffs 4 years in a row with small market, not only small market, 30th market, Milwaukee, tied with Cincinnati. The Mets, the most they ever did in their 62-year history was 2 years in a row. So that's a pretty good record.
Yeah, just to go back to the Alonso thing, John, I think it's always important to parse language with especially the modern executive.
Yeah.
He said, I expect, but I also think he probably has a very good idea, for example, what the Brewers offered for 2 postseasons of Alonso. He knows that is going to come down. He's now probably gotten briefed on what the Cubs or any other team offered. And he could probably state confidently, I'm going to make it this level to, if you even want to get into talk about Pete Alonso. He probably anticipates that's not going to happen. Why not at least get to July next year, see if the team's in the race or not? Because I think he knows how unpopular it would be to trade this player. And how do you replace the power?
Yeah, I mean, they say they're going to compete, right? If you trade Alonso right away, you're not getting pieces that are going to help you compete better. They're already at really 2 starting pitchers that we know about that are going to be viable starting pitchers with Quintana and Senga. So they got work to do there. The bullpen, you got Diaz coming back. Obviously, you lost Robertson, who was your best reliever while he was here. That bullpen needs a lot of work. You need probably another hitter, somebody who can actually bat behind Alonso and protect him. If you begin the offseason trading Alonso, you've really put yourself behind the 8 ball.
Unless you knew absolutely you're using the prospects you get for Alonso as part of a deal to get Soto, and you're going to re-sign Soto a long time, or Ohtani's coming, and you have some way to replace the power, because to your point, they do. I don't think they want to punt on next year. I think they are looking broadly not to do anything to disrupt 2025, 26, 27. But look, the wild card round is just about to begin, John. We know people with the Mets, how sick they are looking at it and going, Miami, Arizona, we're better than these teams, and they couldn't get there. I'm sure San Diego's going through. So they don't want to punt because they know you just have to be kind of good to be in it. So I don't think they remove Alonso without having another power source. Go ahead.
I wouldn't trade Alonso for Soto in that manner. I mean, I think Soto, if it was a straight up trade, okay, I get it. But I don't see the point of that. I do think there is something extra with Alonso, because we do know he's good in the clubhouse, and we won't go over all that right now, but he's good in the clubhouse. He's homegrown. He's already beloved by the fans. Those are the most important things. I mean, I know Stearns' one mistake, if you want to call it that, with Milwaukee, was trading Hader. Certainly affected the clubhouse. Did he learn something from that? Maybe he did. Obviously, the fans were upset. The manager wasn't thrilled. The owner wasn't thrilled. It does, in the long term, it may turn out to be a pretty good trade. They got some good pieces back, including a catcher who was probably their best hitter this year in Contreras, when they traded Esteury Ruiz, who they got for Hader, to get Contreras. But I do think Stearns could come up with some good tricky move or something like that would work in the long term. But, we got to think short term here with the Mets. They cannot have another season like this one. I think they understand that. I hope they understand that. Certainly Steve Cohen was willing to lose a lot of money this year. Hopefully he's willing, not that I wish it on anybody. Hopefully he's willing to lose some money next year as well. Can't have 2 years in a row like this. 74 and 87 is not going to cut it.
Yeah, John, you brought up Counsell at the beginning. Obviously, he added to his workload as far as what he has to do in his first off season. Buck Showalter gone. He's going to have to name a manager. You came out right away and said there's really just two choices here. There's Counsell and Dusty Baker. This is not the kind of job you believe for somebody in their first. They need an experienced guy. Let me throw in one thing. Unless they potentially have a wink-wink deal with Counsell, and that would be illegal. The potential that Counsell and Baker's teams, the Brewers and the Astros, could go deep into this postseason. Yeah. Can the Mets, if they're not 100% positive that Counsell's not going to stay or just retire for a year, or Baker isn't going to stay, don't they have to go through a process? And if it's not those two, then the process just has to center, to me, largely on first-time guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't do another first-time guy. I mean, in my column today, I talked about the most successful Mets managers. I mean, you could put Showalter in there with 101 wins, but certainly Valentine, Collins, Hodges all had previous experience. Davey Johnson was the one exception that, he was his first time managing, and obviously was a great manager. Ultimately, it's very difficult to pick the next Davey Johnson. I know Stearns has had a terrific record. I know I mentioned the Hader situation, but he really has had a terrific record. He has never hired a manager. I mean, we've gone through so many first-time managers. I won't even count Beltran, who never managed a game, but obviously you can't do another Mickey Callaway flyer. You got to be sure this time. So I wouldn't do it. I mean, I did hear him say he wants to grow with the manager. They want to be philosophically on the same page. So even though I think Baker has a good chance to walk away in Houston and be a real free agent, I don't consider that a real possibility at the moment based on what I heard yesterday. So, I mean, is it Counsell or bust? Is it Counsell or we'll see? It sounds like he's willing to be patient and figure it out if he can't get Counsell. Didn't say he's looking at Counsell, but I got to think that Counsell's the top choice, right? I mean, he's one of the best managers in the game. He saw it up close. There can't be some reason that we don't know of that he wouldn't consider Counsell, right?
Yeah, look, I'll throw in one other thing. I think your point about the veterans, Davey Johnson, I believe, was the AAA manager. So right. He had all this history with Gooden and Backman and Dykstra in the minor league. So he had an advantage that I don't think the Mets are looking down into their minor leagues.
That's still not New York, though, right? That's still not New York.
Yeah, I agree. I just go back to the problem with Counsell again, which is he has to run this marathon doing an interview process because, again, unless we are saying that people are tampering, doing something illegal, there is a chance that Greg Counsell could manage a team on November 4th. That's Game 7 of the World Series this year. The Mets can't really begin this process on November 5th, not knowing what Greg Counsell's plans are. And so to me,
well,
like if we get beyond those two, like, are we talking experience? Don Mattingly, John Gibbon, like, what are we talking about? I think he has to run the marathon with a bunch of guys who've never done this.
Yeah, he's going to have a backup plan. I don't think they've done anything unethical, illegal, whatever you want to call it, and have some backroom deal. I can't imagine that they would do that. And why should Counsell do that? I mean, he's sitting pretty at this point, and I don't think he's, I understand the money is probably very important to him, like it would be anywhere else. But I mean, he's managing the Brewers, his hometown team. I mean, if anybody ever found out anything like that happened, he wouldn't be allowed back in his hometown. So, and I think it's going to be tough. I mean, if you're Craig Counsell, I mean, I know guys have done it. I've seen guys make this mistake of going for the extra money, the extra couple million. You can buy a mansion in Milwaukee. It's still going to be over $1 million probably, but obviously these guys make a lot of money, a lot more than we do. But it's about the price of a one bedroom in Midtown Manhattan, right? So the Mets are going to have to outbid by a lot. They're going to have to go beyond Bruce Bochy's high right now at $6 million to even have a chance, I think. But if you're Craig Counsell, do you go for that extra $1 or $2 million and give up your easy life? The two kids, the two girls are in high school in Whitefish Bay. He has a nice 15-minute commute. They all love him in Milwaukee. He doesn't have to deal with much media. His sons are in the Big Ten, though not the new Rutgers part of the Big Ten, the real Big Ten. As a Northwestern person, I can say this: Michigan and Minnesota. Does it make any sense? I mean, I've seen guys go for the extra $1 million or $2 million before, so it's possible. But why would he do it?
I didn't realize we were going to do an episode of Flip This House, but thank you for all the real estate stuff, John. We're talking about managers. Let's flip to the other side of town here. Aaron Boone at some point this week will meet with Hal Steinbrenner. I think we've expected all along Hal Steinbrenner's the kind of guy. He has very strong ties to Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone. He does not want to change those two guys. I think a lot of furniture will get changed this offseason, but I do not think those two guys will get changed. What do you think of that decision?
Well, I mean, Boone has obviously got a great relationship with his bosses. I found now as I'm getting up there in years, the most important thing is not how you perform. It's whether you get along with your bosses, right? And he gets along great with his bosses. He gets along great with the players. I think it's always been a long shot that he will be removed. It has not been a great year. I've seen people say it's an accomplishment with all their injuries, whatever. This has not been an accomplishment. This is a disappointing season. He has not done a great job. He tries hard. He's a great guy. We all like him. We like him in the media. It's not been a good job. I do expect him back. And certainly Cashman, who's had that long-term relationship, he's in a slump. Let's face it. It's been a few years. Garrett Cole was a great move. I get it. That's been a few years. Jordan Montgomery is starting game 1 for Texas. The Yankees traded him because they didn't think he could start a playoff game. He's starting game 1. So it's been a bad run the last 3 years. You can say achievement, whatever you want about this year. 82 and 80 or whatever they were is not an achievement. It's been a bad year. They need to make changes. I think I don't believe they're going to make the big changes. And I get it. It's a tough call. Cashman is probably going to the Hall of Fame. He's won 4 World Series, but he's in a slump. Let's face it.
Yeah, he's in a bad slump. It goes way beyond Montgomery, but that one exposes a lot of things. Let me just refocus back on Davey Johnson. On Aaron Boone really quickly. I had Davey Johnson on my mind from the Mets. But Aaron Boone real quickly. I think that the question is, does he have the ability to change it all? Because I think Hal Steinbrenner has to look at him and say, I have 2 things I need from you, Aaron. Number one, most important, I understand you're all the players' friends, and you were kind of brought in to be the anti-Girardi. You fulfilled that, like where the players are retied to the manager. But you've got to stop indulging things like Gleyber Torres, Harrison Bader fantasy camp, like that they'll just do anything to have fun on the field, like whatever, the mistakes, etc. The second thing is, like, when Carlos Rodon, this is your manager, your pitching coach on the field, you need to follow that out and pull him from the game and deal with it in real time. Do you have the ability to deal with a toughness issue in real time? Yeah. That's one. Number two, it's always surprised me about Aaron Boone. He's a 3rd-generation baseball guy. Grandfather, father, both baseball guys, both executives after they left the game, like him. there feels like a lack of kind of like gut away from the numbers. And I never want to be totally anti-analytics, but like the idea of who he lets around his team in the clubhouse, in the dugout, and what is preached without him distilling it and saying, wait, I was a player, this is too much, or this is ridiculous. So I think, can he get tough on players? Can he get tough on numbers? I think that's what Hal Steinbrenner has to hear.
Yeah, well, I think it's more of a knack rather than it's his third generation baseball player. And I covered the Angels with Bob Boone, and Aaron was around the team every once in a while, so he probably doesn't mind that family atmosphere. I'm not sure that's what's undoing them. I do think he does need help in the dugout. He may be great in the clubhouse. They might need to look at some of the coaching staff. I don't know if there's a Don Zimmer type available, but that certainly helped Joe Torre. I think Joe Torre, Hall of Fame manager. I think Don Zimmer is one of the biggest reasons for that. You have to know when to push the right button. I heard the criticism of Boone that Rodon was willing to do that to Blake. That's a criticism that on Boone. I didn't see that. What you said, I agree with. I see that. He should have pulled him. That's the criticism. I think you got it exactly right. It's not that Rodon did this. That's Rodon. In the spur of the moment, he might do something like that. We saw him blow a kiss. So, but you got to be ready to then make the move and get him out of there. He was pitching like garbage anyway. That would have been the right move at that moment. Yes, I agree.
Well, just to wrap this up, John, is what I'll say is, for a lot of this year, for the last few months, we've known they're not making the playoffs. The most important thing Aaron Boone could have done is establish how you want to play the game and behave. And there were lots of moments where he could have dealt with some of the mistakes by Torres or Bader before he moved on the field. And certainly, like when he said about Rodon, well, it's the end of the season, or I might have, well, the guy's got 5 more years left on his contract. Can you show him you will not tolerate that level of disrespect?
Right.
That occurred on the mound. And so I just don't know if Aaron Boone has that gear, like the ability to play tough cop. To your point, does it have to be like a bench coach who does it? Like, and again, I'm just throwing this out. Like, do you have to hire back Phil Nevin to be his buddy, Phil Nevin to be the bench coach, who at least I think would get up in somebody's grill and say,
he definitely would.
Like, this is unacceptable. But I mean, I do think that the temperament of the team needs to change in that way. Look, we were going to be joined by a man. We talked about managers on both New York teams. We'll be talking to the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Dave Roberts, who'll be taking his team to the playoffs yet again, if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John and I are so happy to have Dave Roberts for a variety of reasons. Number one is that he was number one, the first guest ever on this podcast. But also, I get to say that Dave Roberts is in the playoffs. Once again, I think you're 8 for 8, 7 division titles. And I went and looked at this. The 3 best records in Dodger history were recorded with Dave Roberts as the manager of the team. And by the way, that's an organization that goes back to 1884. And so, Dave, thank you so much for joining us yet again on the show.
No, gosh, Joel, John, you guys are the best, and I have so much respect for you guys. And yeah, when you talk about context of history, that's mind-blowing stuff. So as you guys know, I like to live in the moment, but when you kind of take a look back, it's mind-blowing. I'm very fortunate to be a part of this organization.
So just as a first question, this was an organization that this year maybe had that feeling of they stepped back payroll-wise, didn't do the big star stuff in the offseason, we're going to break in a lot of young players. Why do you think it worked? 100 wins, 7th division title in 8 years for you, 10th in 11 years for the organization. Why did it work this year, Dave?
You know what? I'm telling you, and obviously, you have to have good players, and we've got a good group of players, great character. And I think the thing is that people talk a lot about it. I know you guys know that I talk a lot about culture, and I just think it creates an opportunity for guys that are new to an organization, that are unfamiliar territory, or young players that come to the big leagues, an opportunity to thrive and be themselves. And I just feel really confident in what we provide for players, for coaches, to get the best of themselves each year. And Yeah, I think that initially we were sort of not written off, but certainly not looked or picked to win 100 games. And just the consistency of how we go about things, I think, played out as such.
Dave, thanks again for joining us. I think you're one of a small group of multi-time guests, so we appreciate that. I think Steve Cohen has been on a couple of times, Billy Epler. I'm not sure who else. Joe probably has the list right in his head, but thank you very much. Appreciate it. I had you as the manager of the year this year, but a lot of good managing jobs in the National League. Snitker obviously did a great job. Council did a great job. Lavello, there were a lot of very, very good jobs. What did you do this year? I mean, you've lost basically your whole rotation. Kershaw's the only one left, and he's not completely whole. How difficult was this for you?
It was a tough one, John. But I think that with that, in that same breath, it was my most satisfying job, I think, and I speak for the coaches as well. You look at how many young players impacted a 100-win team, rookies, and to get these guys to get up to speed, major league speed, and be huge contributors. I'm proud of that. And I think that, when you get Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, Ryan Pepio, James Outman, Michael Grove up here, and they're big contributors and have to learn on the fly, that's doing something, and that's coaching, and that's our job. So I think for us, it wasn't idyllic, but we made the most of it. And sometimes, the best situation is something you have no other options. And we were kind of these players were thrust into the situation as being big league ball players for the Los Angeles Dodgers. And we made it work, which I'm proud of.
Dave, one of the questions coming down the stretch was who's going to be the NL MVP, something we're not going to find out for a while yet until after the postseason is done. And you obviously have one of the two main candidates. You have two of the main candidates, right? Freddie Freeman is going to finish in the top 3 or 4, but this comes down to Acuna or Betts. I suspect I know who you think should be the MVP. Make a case for your guy. Why should Mookie Betts be the National League most valuable player?
Well, first off, baseball is in a really good spot. If you're talking about just one league and you're talking about those 4 players of great character, great talent, and certainly put forth amazing seasons. My case for Mookie Betts is it's the versatility piece. I think that, to be able to be a Gold Glove right fielder, to play Gold Glove second base, to go from the outfield grass to the dirt really doesn't happen. I mean, you're talking Robin Yount stuff. And so to be able to do that, to still be able to hit 39 homers, score 100 runs, drive in 100 runs, allow for, the thing is, guys, is that you're talking about most valuable player, and it's the constant yearly debate is it the best player or is it the most valuable player on a team? Because I'll tell you this, if it's the most valuable player on the team, Mookie Betts' ability to play on the dirt allows for Jason Hayward to play, who had a 900 OPS this year. So we're just not the same team. Then you could argue, Ronald's numbers. So they're both great, but I just think the availability, the versatility of Mookie is separator.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Joel, you mentioned the other player, I think, in the top 4 is Matt Olson. Certainly a case can be made for Mookie Betts. My feeling is that probably, fair or not, kind of history and headlines will kind of tell the tale, and we think Acuna will probably win. What I'm interested in right now is you've pieced together the rotation somehow, winning 100 games now for the 4th consecutive year in the big years, in the years that we didn't have the pandemic. You won the World Series in the year that we did win the pandemic. We did have the pandemic. How do you piece together the rotation right now? A lot of people are looking at it like you're going to have to use openers. You did it, in that 2020 season, using Urias as a closer at times, certainly. So you did some unusual things. How are you going to do it? Do you have any, I guess Kershaw's a starter, a full starter. Maybe Miller is. Is anybody else a full starter for 6+ innings for you? And how are you going to piece it together?
You know what? I think that, to be honest with you, John, I don't see any of these guys really being 6+ innings. I think that the collection of 12 to 13 arms. I think the arm talent is really special. They're unique. I think that there's not a lot of familiarity with other hitters. So I think that from one side, it could be a position of strength. Certainly there's an unknown for some of our young players in the postseason. But I think we're just going to kind of throw a bunch of different looks at guys and go from there. And I really feel that we're going to prevent runs. And, when you're facing ones and twos, it's going to be tough. But also, there's some power arms that we're going to be throwing at guys. So I feel good, again, that we'll prevent runs.
I wonder if I could delve a little deeper into that, Dave. It does put some pressure on you, your pitching people, to make decisions during the game. If you had a traditional situation, Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw in closer to his prime, that kind of group of guys, Urias, unfortunately, those kind of guys, you kind of have some rope. How much do you pre-program, hey, this is how much we want to do, versus watching the real-time game and figuring out how to navigate 27 outs?
I think it's a lot of watching the game. I think the thing is, Joel, is there's some of the pre-programming, the script that happens in baseball, I guess. But I think for us, I think that early on it kind of got a lot of traction with that. But I watch the game, and if certain things are happening, we have a lot of neutral pitchers, and so that's a good thing. But I think if the stuff's still coming out good, but I do think that one thing I will keep an eye on, though, is familiarity. 2 times through, 3 times through, the numbers are consistent as far as the hitter's success. So having other guys in the stable and varying looks, I think, is going to be a good thing. And also, again, it's a power of strength that I feel we can deploy guys whenever we choose. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of conversations with people, front office, coaches, just kind of, I like to take information and figure out, where everyone sits, stands, and then, I'll make the decision with Mark Pryor accordingly during the game.
Healthy or not, Kershaw has a 2.5 ERA basically consistently every year, probably the best pitcher over the last couple decades at least. Where does he stand now in terms of his shoulder? And, there have been rumors that he may retire after the year. He probably had a good enough year. You would think he would come back. He's certainly been very good once again. And would he definitely be a Dodger? There are rumors that his hometown team in Dallas or Arlington might be interested.
So I'll work backwards. I don't know if he's coming back. I've kind of thought that it was an option the last 3 years. And then, kind of getting into January, he decides that he wants to play and feels like he can be a contributor. It's certainly a family decision with him and his wife, Ellen. And Texas certainly was in play last winter. I know he has a good relationship with Chris Young. I don't know. I know he loves being a Dodger. So if he does come back to pitch, I would assume it would be with the Dodgers. And that's my honest answer. Health-wise, I think he's in a really good spot. I think if you look back at 5 weeks ago to where we're at today, each week, each outing, it's gotten better. And so if you look at kind of how we've used him, he went into the 6th inning, touched the 6th his last outing. So I think that's probably the extent of it, even looking out into the postseason. But Clayton's been fantastic. And even when he's not 100% healthy, guys, he still competes. He still puts up numbers. And he, like I've said before, man, he just wills himself to success. And yeah, you're talking about the last 20 years, he's in an elite group and probably at the top of that list.
Dave, I'm just thinking about your team and legacy a little bit. John mentioned you won the pandemic year, the World Series. It's a World Series. It goes down on your record. But this team has been the dominant team for a little over a decade now, getting in the playoffs every year. I mentioned your 100-win seasons. I think you have 5 in your 8 years. You've gone into the postseason a lot as the favorite. What does it mean to your and the organization's legacy to get through one of these again as the last team standing?
It would mean a lot. I think that, all that everyone's had to go through, and whether you're the favorite, the expectation to realize that, or not the favorite and to ultimately realize that, it's special. and it takes a lot of work from a lot of people. Legacy is something a word that I really take a lot of pride in, and that speaks to consistency and quality of work. So I'm proud of that. I understand that the playoff structure is different than when you guys first started covering baseball, and you two really understand that and appreciate that it's hard to win a championship. And not to say it wasn't 40 years ago, but when 44 teams are getting to the dance versus 16, it's different. It's a lot of hard work. Again, I hope it happens. We're going to do everything we can. I think the experience with some of our guys, the newness of some of our guys, I love this group of men. And so I'm just hoping that we can keep this group together through October.
Yeah, you're right. If it was only 4, you'd be in every year anyway, it seems. So it is a little bit more difficult now. I want to ask you a tough question, but I know you're a smart guy. Julio Urias, he was a big part of the 2020 championship. I'm assuming now he hasn't pitched in a while. There's been no resolution to his case, so we don't know exactly how that's going to turn out. But I'm assuming he's not going to be back this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. And is there any chance that he could be back with the Dodgers? It doesn't feel like there is.
You know what? First off, it's a very unfortunate situation. I think the world of Julio, and when you spend 8 years with the player, a person, you get to know him and you get to care about him. And so what we heard, still haven't seen any video. Obviously, Major League Baseball, law enforcement, they're doing their due diligence, and he's on the restricted list. So we haven't seen him, we haven't heard from him. And so obviously he's not going to be pitching for us this year. And as far as what the future holds, I have no idea. I just am saddened. It's a gut punch for everybody. And it's one of those things that you got to feel for the whole situation, but you got to keep moving forward, and we have jobs to do.
Right. You mentioned, Urias, you didn't get an inning this season from Walker Buehler, not much from Gonsolin and Dustin May, a compromised Clayton Kershaw. We cover baseball in New York, and we do the national, but we cover baseball in New York every day. And we have two organizations that have kind of Dodger envy. The Yankees want to be kind of the East Coast Dodgers, and Steve Cohen hasn't hit it. He wants to be like you guys. What is it about? What are you doing so well that you bring in a Bobby Miller, you bring in an Outman, and the machine keeps going? You mentioned Pepio, Sheehan, guys who are going to play important parts if you're going to be the last team standing. Why are you guys good at this?
So I can't, I don't want to divulge all of our trade secrets, Joel.
It's just the three of us.
Joel, no, Joel, you guys are East Coast guys. And see, here's the thing is that sometimes I love that you guys wake up and check a box score or see some highlights, because you don't get to see the secret sauce that we have out west.
Bedtime. It's past my bedtime. Sorry.
I thought the only secret sauce out west was on the In-N-Out burger. You've got
to tell us what's going on. So that's already out.
Yes,
that is good.
No, you know what, man? Scouting. I mean, I'll tell you right now, it's like our scouting guys. We do a great job, and you guys know that. Shoot, we're picking 28th, 29th, 30th every year, and we still find a way to get good players. And a lot of our scouts look at and really dig into the makeup. And then you get to the player development part. And I think that with the PD, and we're really synced up on the old school, Donnie Alexander on the pitching with Rick Honeycutt there. And then we've got, some new school stuff too. And then, so once they get to us, I think our coaches do a fantastic job of still developing and pouring into players. And we mentioned it at the top. The culture and just making guys feel comfortable. And, certainly LA is not New York, and expectations and guys like you two that are just wearing down these young players and expectations. So LA is a little bit of an easier transition. But, I don't know the answer. I just know that there's a certain expectation we have to go out there and win every year. And I'm not saying it's easy to realize it. The fun part is going through the process, the practice, the dog days where, we're in April and May and we're written off. We're under 500 playing middling baseball, but we continue to remain steadfast, persevere. And here we are So again, I don't know the answer. I just know that, every year we go about trying to win one baseball game a day. And you look back and you're like, man, we had a pretty good regular season. And now we got to take this momentum into the postseason.
You're a big market team that usually spends near the top, but somehow you get the most out of guys that you bring in on a shoestring. Obviously lost in the last couple of years, Seager, who's an MVP candidate, Bellinger, who has regained his form. I don't know whether he was hurt or what, but he's certainly close to back to what he was originally. But I want to ask you about the guys that came in, JD Martinez and particularly Hayward. I was with you in spring training in early March, and I don't remember who told me, but somebody said to me, Hayward's going to make this team. And I was surprised at the time. At age, I think 34, he's had his best year. How do you get these years in their mid-30s out of and for a relative song compared to the guys you lost out of Martinez and particularly Hayward?
Yeah, so it's funny. Quick story. I was with my wife yesterday, and we're going on shopping down in San Diego, and I run into Xander Bogaerts, and he's like, "Hey man, how you doing? Congratulations!" And he's like, "How the heck did you guys get JD Martinez to play so well?" He goes, "I was teammates, and I knew he was good and still going to be okay, but I didn't expect this." And JD missed a lot of time and still drove in 100 runs, hit 30 homers, and I'll tell you, I give Robert Van Scoyoc a lot of credit. He's the guy that went to bat for him with Andrew and Brandon Gomes to acquire him, and so bring him to Los Angeles, a place he wanted to be, getting back with his old teammate and good friend Mookie Betts. That was fantastic. And also JD took a lot less to bet on himself and to kind of restore his career. So I give JD a lot of credit. He's an absolute pro, and I just love spending time with him. And that kind of theme, dovetails to Jason Hayward in the sense of betting on himself. He had another year with the Cubs, was non-tendered or released or whatever, and he wanted to come to the Dodgers. His best friend, Freddie Freeman, to kind of be teammates again, and he bet on himself. Once we signed him, he came to LA for about a month in December, was away from his kids, worked out, got with our hitting guys, and then cleaned some things up. And then you look back at what he's done, and he's now he's got an opportunity. He's a new player. I mean, his swing is a lot more clean. He's playing Gold Glove defense. I mean, if it wasn't for Tatis, this guy's would win the Gold Glove in right field. So, and the last thing I'll say about Jason is everything I've talked about on the field, what he's impacted, how he's impacted our clubhouse is tenfold more impactful.
I don't want to bury part of a story of the Dodgers this year. We glossed over it at the beginning when we were talking a little bit about Mookie, Acuna. John mentioned Matt Olson. You do have Freddie Freeman on your team, and I'm pretty sure that if you told me I had to bet all my money for one at bat against a pitcher any pitcher in the world, I would take Freddie Freeman to take that at bat. That's how good a hitter I think he is. After managing him now for a couple of years, what do we not see in the box score? What do we not see in wins above replacement? What do you have in Freddie Freeman?
What people don't see is, and that's a great question, Joel. What people don't see, and you can't appreciate if you don't watch this guy play every single day, is there's, call it 300 pitches in a game. He doesn't take one off. And when he's in the batter's box, it doesn't matter the score, the count, the pitcher, the handedness. He does not. He competes every single pitch. And I've made this reference, a guy that I really have a lot of respect for, and I played against. I'd never seen anything like it since Todd Helton. And that was a very intense and certainly different makeups of guys. But Freddie Freeman, I've never seen a player compete the way he does, and the routine, what he's done for our culture and being a professional and how he plays the game. This guy had 59 doubles. I would say that a dozen of those doubles at least should have been singles, would have been singles for anyone else outside of Freddie Freeman. And this guy, the care, the desire, the will to post every day and to win pitches is just remarkable.
Dave, before we let you go here, we are doing this on the dawn of the postseason. You guys have a bye out of the first round. Anything just big picture? You're going to be a viewer too. a fan for the first round. You've been in a ton of these now. What are you thinking as these playoffs begin?
I'm going to watch them. I'm really excited. I'm really excited. I'm going to be a fan in the American League with keeping a little bit of a watchful eye. Certainly going to be locking into the D-backs and the Brewers. We've got a lot of history with the Brewers, and obviously in the regular season with the D-backs. This is going to be fun, and it's like, I just think that there's just so much talent. I'm looking forward to the Twins finally winning a playoff game. I get to see my good buddy Boch and CY and Will Venable, the associate manager over there. So I'm going to be locking in. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it is nice to sit back and not have to grind through a wild card series. So we'll get our guys ready. We will be ready. The Dodgers will be ready, but I'm just as much of a fan. I'm a fan first. So it's going to be a fun postseason.
Dave, as we say goodbye, I held back one thing because I wanted everyone to know. 160 human beings have managed at least 900 games in Major League history. The best winning percentage of those 190 is Dave Roberts, 630. It could get missed when you have a great team, that there has to be a manager in charge of it. Also, I watched everyone underappreciate Joe Torre during years. Somebody has to be in charge, and I didn't want it to go that we don't recognize that you have been the man in charge of a lot of winning there. So Dave Roberts, as we did the first time you were our guest, we thank you for joining us, and we wish you the best of luck in the playoffs.
You know what? Thank you guys, Joel, John. I got so much respect for you guys. Thank you for saying that. And what I think I told you before is you guys are baseball lifers. You love our game, and you guys are great advocates. And I just think that baseball is really coming, and I just want our game to I want everyone to talk about baseball, play baseball, and I just really appreciate you and what you do for our game. So thank you guys.
Of course, we thank our guest, Dave Roberts, the manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers. John, playoffs about to begin. We get to play hit or error for the last time before the postseason.
Yeah, I'll give a hit to MLB. Attendance was up 9.6%. I think a lot of it had to do with the new rules. The more stolen bases, you can't throw over endlessly to first base. The bases are bigger. It's funny, the rules that turned out to be a big deal were not the ones we expected. We thought the banning of the shift was the big rule. That didn't turn out to be the big one, at least I don't think. And the other ones were huge, particularly the time of game, shaved 24 minutes. That's a plus for us writers, but I think it was a plus for the fans as well.
Yeah, among the deep dive the Yankees will have to do is, another place they had a guru, a base stealing, base running guru. With the rules were liberated, everyone stole more, the percentage was higher. Not the Yankees, same exact numbers from last year, something they'll have to dig into. That's an error. I don't know what to call this, a hit or an error, but we mentioned Phil Nevin before. At this point, we have 4 open managerial jobs: Mets, Guardians, Giants, and Angels, with the possibility, I think, of Brewers, Padres, and Astros before this whole thing is done. And maybe the Angels decided that Phil Nevin has to go. But I think one of the ways to think about, was this his fault or not, is whether I just list the 4 that are actually available, or I want to go to 7. That's the 7th best job. That's the 7th. To work for Artie Moreno is the 7th best job available this offseason. And to me, it says something about that job. 2014, the last time they made the playoffs, them and the Tigers, the longest. Phil Nevin hasn't been the manager since 2014.
No, but you get to live in Newport Beach. There's a positive about anything, and
we're going to flip the house again. We're now talking about real estate again, living in Newport Beach. John, we're on the wrong podcast.
They're in the dugout in the clubhouse a lot of the time, but you have to live too. So you're probably right. That's not a great job at the moment, and we don't think Ohtani's probably going back there. So, and they've traded.
You got to manage Ohtani. You got to manage Trout to the end of his career, which will be. The next few years will be the worst years of his career. It's not a great job.
Yeah, fair.
Yep. Well, we are going to begin the playoffs. John and I will be with you throughout the playoffs, throughout the offseason. If you stick with us, the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman, a podcast from the New York Post. Thank you to our producers, as always, Jake Brown and Andrew Hartz. Don't forget, this episode drops on the Yes app about noon on Wednesday every week. Rate, subscribe, listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Please give us a 5-star rating if you think about it. And here we go, John. The second season will be with I'll be with you someplace along the way, probably by the World Series. I think you're going to do the NLCS at some point. I'll do the ALCS. We'll meet at the World Series, jump right to the GM meetings. and we'll talk about it all on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.